Kim Kardashian's illegal selfie, Twitter lifts character limits, and a fancy Swiss smartwatch. Tech News Tonight is next.
This is Twit.
This is Tech News Tonight, episode 401 for Wednesday, August 12th, 2015. This episode of Tech News Tonight is brought to you by Braintree. If you're working on a mobile app and searching for a simple payment solution, check out Braintree. With one simple integration, you can offer your customers every way to pay, period. To learn more and for your first $50,000 in transactions fee-free, go to braintreepayments.com/technight. Welcome. I am Megan Maroney. Let's get to today's big news. The Next Web reports that Chinese computer company Lenovo used a hidden Windows feature to ensure that pre-installed bloatware could not be deleted even if you did a clean install on your PC. The software is called the Lenovo Service Engine, and in addition to being a feature designed to automatically download Lenovo software and services, it also created a security vulnerability. Technically, Lenovo wasn't doing anything untoward. They were simply taking advantage of a little-known feature called the Windows Platform Binary Table to insert code that cannot be removed. However, you might remember the hot water Lenovo got into a few months ago when users discovered that their laptops had become pre-installed with adware that tracked search habits and delivered pop-up ads. The worst part about that was that Lenovo originally, they were like, oh, what's the big deal? Until they realized that they'd created a PR nightmare. To their credit, Lenovo has done better PR this time. This afternoon, they came out with a statement on their site claiming that all systems made in June onwards are not vulnerable. Also, no Think-branded computers included the Lenovo Service Engine. Big news if you care about sending lengthy direct messages to people on Twitter. You're no longer limited to 140 characters. We reported this back in June, but now is a beautiful reality. To clarify, public tweets are still limited to 140 characters, but direct messages no longer are. Twitter says they're rolling out this change today across their Android and iOS apps on Twitter.com, TweetDeck, and Twitter for Mac. According to Computer World, Patch Tuesday is still alive and well, even in the era of Windows 10. Some in the industry surmise that Windows 10 would offer security updates as they become available instead of waiting until the second Tuesday of every month, as they have in the past. But yesterday was the second Tuesday of the month, and Microsoft released 14 security bulletins in one big batch. The updates were both critical and important, covering vulnerabilities in Windows, Internet Explorer, and Microsoft Office. I am generally not a fan of Kim Kardashian news, but in case you were prone to taking her medical advice via social media, I thought I would issue a warning. The Guardian says that Kardashian has been forced to delete a selfie on Instagram endorsing a morning sickness drug, an endorsement in which she was paid for. Maybe you think it's normal to take money to promote a drug on Instagram, especially if it is a morning sickness drug that you take and that works. But The Guardian did say that just last month, Kardashian told reporters that her Instagram account was off limits to ads. The endorsement is still up on Twitter if you're interested. U.S. regulators forced Kardashian to take down the Instagram post because it breaks advertising laws. Coming up, wearable tech and robot dating. But first, this episode is brought to you by Braintree, code for easy online payments. If you're a mobile app developer, check out Braintree. Braintree is the payment solution used by companies like Uber and Airbnb. And if you think about one of the features that made these companies stand out, you probably think about how easy it is for you to pay using these companies. Braintree scaled with these companies from early stage startups to the successful companies they are today. So Braintree can scale with your business too. Braintree has made the payment experience in these apps seamless and magical, and now you can add a similar experience to your own app. With excellent customer service and simple integration, Braintree gets you ready to receive payments quickly. Braintree gives you a full stack payment solution, support for all payment types your customers might want. So start accepting PayPal or Apple Pay, Bitcoin, Venmo, cards, and more, all with a single integration across all platforms, with superior fraud protection, customer service, and fast payouts. To learn more and for your first $50,000 in transactions fee-free, go to braintreepayments.com/technight. Our guest today is Jon Phillips, editor-in-chief of PC World, Mac World, Tech Hive, and Greenbot. In his review of the Frederic Constant Swiss smartwatch, Phillips likens the touchscreen smartwatches to dad jeans, fanny packs, and bright yellow mock turtlenecks. Now, John, those are fighting words.
Those are pretty harsh words, but I do feel strongly about it. I'm certainly not the most fashionable guy you're ever going to meet, but I think we all have our own sense of vanity. And my sense of vanity tells me I just can't wear a touchscreen watch, certainly not every day. I test them all the time. I've tested Apple Watch and all the Android Wear watches, the early Samsung watches. So they do have their place. They have a lot of friction points, and one of them is how they look and the fashion statement they make. And so the interesting thing about the Frederic Constant, and there's some other smart watches that borrow the same core technology. They're all Swiss manufacturers. The thing about it is that it's a real Swiss watch. It looks like a real Swiss watch. It is one. And so you really don't have to compromise the aesthetics. And it does deliver smart features, albeit a very small set. And that is one of my complaints. But it just so happens I'm also really into activity tracking, and these smartwatches, including the Frederic Constant, it includes the same motion tracking algorithms that were in the first two generations of the Jawbone-Up wristband.
So how does it track your activity? Does it have a heart rate monitor like the Apple Watch? How does it do it?
No, so there's no heart rate monitor, and we could talk about heart rate monitors too, because I'm not sure if that's a necessary component of a smartwatch, unless it could be done very, very well. But it does have an accelerometer which tracks motion during daytime, in other words, your steps, and then nighttime, the small movements you'll make with your wrist, and that could tell you a lot about your light sleep and your deep sleep. And so essentially, it's like having a Swiss watch with a Fitbit or a Jawbone-Up directly integrated inside.
So it's an analog watch, and then the activity tracker is analog too. It's the same kind of points to how many hours you sleep or how many steps you've taken, sort of the percentage during the day.
That's right. And so unlike some of the early wristband activity trackers, where you would have to pair it with a smartphone to see your data, the dial at the bottom of these Swiss watches shows you that activity. So as you're moving around throughout the day, the lower dial is slowly progressing through your activity goal. So if your goal is 10,000 steps and you've hit 8,000 steps, you're going to see that dial hit the 10 o'clock. Essentially it's going to be up there in the corner. I can't do the math right on the spot. And it'll basically represent how many steps you've taken. The same basic UI also applies for nighttime sleep tracking. Now, if you dig inside the mobile app, which is on, for iOS and Android, you can see a deeper level of data. And at that point, it really does begin to look just like what you would find with the Jawbone-Up apps. Now, remember, Jawbone also changed its technology with the Up 3. It's completely different now. It got a lot of bad reviews. I tested that product and decided not to review it because I didn't have anything to add to the negativity. The Up 3 has a lot of problems. I like the simple approach that the Swiss manufacturers are taking with this watch, and I think it also is an important lesson for all wearable manufacturers. I think they try to cram too much into such a small screen, such a small UI, that it sort of defeats the purpose of being quick, glanceable information.
So the Constant doesn't have any notifications at all, right?
That's right, it doesn't. And I do take it to task for that in the review. I don't necessarily knock it down any verdict points because it doesn't have notifications. I don't think it's trying to be a replacement for your Apple Watch or for an Android Wear watch. If you need those and notifications are great, then these Swiss watches are not for you. But if you're looking for a really attractive watch that does do the step and sleep tracking and also resets the time and resets the date, because remember, it's syncing with your smartphone. If you're looking for that kind of device, then it really delivers because it does look good. And the manufacturers are going to come out with watches designed for women. And there's a company called Mondon that is doing what I would call more of a gender-neutral watch. And that's called the Helvetica. And that just went on sale. And it looks sort of like like a Swiss Army watch. It's the kind of thing I think both men and women would buy.
So now let's get back to the idea of notifications. I mean, you said that was something that is missing on this watch, but I mean, is it? I mean, I that's what I wonder, if we really need notifications at all. I mean, that's the way I convince myself that I love my watch, because I can be notified of anything, and it's better to be notified just with a tap on the wrist rather than the crazy loud sounds, or, you know, I don't have to keep my watch. I mean, I don't have to keep my phone on the table. So, but then I get to those times where I just think, like, do I really need notifications at all? Is that something we really need, or is it just that sort of endorphin shot that we're getting that we don't really need?
Well, we definitely don't need them unless you're waiting for that critical notification from a spouse, a child, a doctor. I think that when I've tested the Android Wear watches and Apple Watch, I've appreciated the notifications a lot. I am that person who, when my phone buzzes in my pocket during a meeting at work, I do want to know who's reaching out to me, and I fight that urge to dig into my pocket and to find out who is calling or texting. So I like the notifications, but they're certainly not necessary. And of course, there's a really strong argument that says we are overexposed to notifications, to our digital lifestyles. We need to get off the grid. So for a lot of people, not having those notifications is a plus, and the notifications do create their own friction as far as, you know, social signals that we send to each other. So you're onto something, but when I get the notifications, I do like them.
So this will track your steps, but is it really a sports watch? I mean, is it, if it doesn't have the, you said we could get to heart rate monitors, so let's talk about that. I mean, I use my Apple Watch when I go running, when I do yoga. I like to see what my heart rate is. Do you think they're not accurate?
I don't think they're accurate. So I've done a lot of testing with heart rate monitors as well, and it's if you talk to anyone who really knows this space from an engineering standpoint, they'll tell you how difficult it is to get accurate heart rate readings off of your wrist with a spectroscopic system. So when you're doing a spot check with Apple Watch, or even, let's say, a lot of the Android Wear watches, in other words, you're standing still, you're trying to get a single moment in time kind of reading, heart rate reading, they are accurate. But what they can't deliver is that chest strap experience that a lot of hardcore runners or people who are training, who are trying to stay within a very specific heart rate range. So the one device that I've tested that does pull that off pretty well is the Basis Peak. And so Basis, they were bought by Intel sometime in the last 6 months or a year. I can't remember when. They do have extra engineering that gives you a much more accurate heart rate reading, and they'll go so far as to say we can do real-time heart rate monitoring during the heat of vigorous exercise. Apple doesn't make that claim. Apple will look at heart rate over time and tell you how you did, and then of course they'll give you the spot check, but it's a different kind of system, and we have to appreciate the fact that Apple is not claiming continuous real-time heart rate during the heat of exercise.
So it's giving me some data that I can compare over time to myself, but it might not be absolutely accurate.
Right, and it could be useful data depending on how you're using the heart rate monitor. But I think for people who are doing zone training, who really want to know, am I between 100 and 120 BPM during this run? I don't want to go below and I don't want to go above. They're going to need a more accurate device. So that could be Basis Peak. The Microsoft Band purported to do that. I found it didn't, and that's not a wearable that's doing well. And then earbud-based heart rate monitors, they actually do pretty well, and those can be consistent with the chest strap monitors that athletes have used for a long time.
So what about calorie counting? Do you think that the Apple Watch does a good job of that? I mean, that's based on heart rate and movement.
Yeah, I think I like the calorie counting metric or paradigm or platform, whatever you want to call it, that they're going with, because it's consistent it's consistent to the individual over time. And so I don't think anyone is using it to really drill down into, did I burn 2,000 calories today or 2,100? They really want to they want to know that they're making progress in one direction or another. So it doesn't need that same level of accuracy that you need from a heart rate monitor if you're doing zone training. I think people just want to know, like, did I have a good day? Or am I beating my rings? Am I closing my ring for calorie burns? And so if you could do that day after day, and the system stays consistent within itself, which I think it does, because it has its algorithms, it knows you're establishing your own baselines, then I think that's valuable data.
So it would be the same with the steps. If all you wanted to do was make sure that you had as many steps, then you could wear this fancy Swiss watch and do the same thing.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. I think the step thing gets a little blurry and problematic when you're comparing your steps to a friend's steps. And so when the Samsung wearables came out, they were wildly off on step counts. And then, someone was coming back from the same hike that they went on with a friend who might have been wearing a Fitbit or a Jawbone, and the steps are all over the map. And so when your data is showing wild swings that just don't make sense, then you have a problem. But I think I haven't seen anything that shows the Apple Watch is far off on steps, and they're all going to vary, by certain degrees, 5%, 10%. And as long as you're looking at your own data and not obsessing over, well, am I beating my friend? And some systems do have that. Then you should be okay.
So the battery life is a big question. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm looking at mine. I have 45% battery left in my Apple Watch, and I'm planning to go to San Francisco and be out late in the night, and I already turned it off because I just don't think it's going to last that long. I have the Pebble. I've tried that, and they do the week battery life, but it doesn't do anything. Like the watch doesn't do anything. So they're big. It's going to last a whole week. It doesn't really matter because it didn't compare to the Apple Watch for me. But the Swiss watch, the Frédéric Constant, that battery life is crazy. It's forever, right? How long is it?
Well, it's 2 years, which is equivalent to what a Swiss watch of a quartz crystal is going to give you. So I'm wearing a Swiss watch right now. I had to give the Frédéric Constant back, but I have one Swiss watch. It's my own. I bought it, and I have to replace the battery every couple of years, and that's just that's the normal use case for Swiss watches. The battery life on all the other wearables, Pebble gives you a week. Some wristbands can give you 7 to 10 days. But Android Wear watches might get you to a day and a half. Apple Watches typically a day. It all depends on how you use it. And that's a big friction point. So I've quoted an Endeavor Partners study a lot. A lot of other journalists have as well. And the study basically looks at the attrition rates for wearables. And they're improving. But the first study, which came out about a year ago, said that about 1/3 of all wearable owners stopped using their devices after 6 months. They just put them in a desk drawer and stopped using them. Some people bought those devices. Other people got the devices as gifts. But that's really bad attrition. Could you imagine if you stopped using your smartphone after 6 months of use? I mean, it's just untenable. And so they looked at what are the pain points, and battery life is a big one. And so what I tell people is the first time your wearable runs out of battery life, you're mad at yourself, but you keep wearing it. The second time you run out of battery life and you can't have a usable wearable for the rest of the day, you begin to blame the manufacturer. The third time you ask yourself, well, do I want to wear this day in, day out? And so when battery life's always been a big friction point for these devices, and it's going to continue to be unless battery technology improves or people make smarter decisions about display technology. I think color displays and the way they're approaching that is maybe not the smartest way to go. So, yeah, battery life's a problem.
Well, I think there's one more that, I mean, unless you're really involved in tech and reviewing these products, and for me, it's the apps, because I know why my battery's dying so quickly is I've just downloaded the Outlook email app, and so it's giving me notifications, it's letting me respond to emails, and I'm doing that on my watch, and that's taking up a lot of battery, so.
Yeah, you got to make smart decisions about what you run. I mean, wearing these wearables is sort of an exercise in app management, pain management, personal management. Like, what are you willing to give up, and where are you going to push and pull the efficiencies to get more battery life? So you could lower the display brightness. You can have much less running in the background. I mean, there's approaches you can take, but this is something that industry onlookers predicted way before wearables really took root, and it's coming to fruition that battery life's an issue. And everyone is building faster processors. They need to be more efficient. That's really where all the wearable processors need to go. We don't need speed. We need them to sip battery life instead of downing it like a big gulp.
Mm-hmm. Well, before I let you go, we should say how much these cost. I know there are different ranges. The Frederic Constant, the one that you had, the basic one, is around $900.
$995.
$995.
So they're quite expensive. And when this consortium called MMT, excuse me, announced these were coming out, they said some of the watches would dip down into the few $100 range, which to me I interpret as $300. But right now they're the one I tested was $1,000. There's a women's version from a company called Alpina that has diamonds. I think that is quite expensive, maybe $1,800. The Mondon, which looks really cool, is currently selling, I think, for $800, and then there'll be less expensive versions. But yeah, they're quite expensive. They're almost expensive Apple Watch territory.
Well, I like my fanny pack Apple Watch. I'm still going to keep it, and it has my email. I don't need the diamonds. But thank you so much. Jon Phillips is the editor-in-chief of PC World, Mac World, Tech Hive, which they review Internet of Things products. That's what Tech Hive does, right?
Yes.
And you're at Jon Phillips with 2L, at Jon Phillips SF on Twitter.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us. Take care.
Bye-bye.
And finally tonight, if you spend as much time on Twitter as I do, then you probably already know that today dating site Tinder completely freaked out on Twitter about a Vanity Fair article called Tinder and the Dawn of the Dating Apocalypse. Now, if you don't spend as much time on Twitter as I do, then you probably don't even care. Suffice it to say, Tinder got very defensive about claims made by Vanity Fair, and then for some reason, Tinder claimed to be very popular in North Korea, which is kind of the equivalent of Anthony Michael Hall claiming to have a girlfriend in the Niagara Falls area. Meanwhile, Mashable has a more important story about Tinder. This one is about an Arduino-based robot that can do your Tinder swiping for you. Tinderbot was created as an experiment to see what automating human choice might look like when it comes to online dating. You enter preferences such as age, smile, glasses, and ethnicity, and then the bot analyzes profiles from the phone screen with a camera and then swipes left or right with two padded prongs. And that is it for this edition of Tech News Tonight. We are on Facebook, so like us to get links to the show when it's posted and the stories we talk about. And if you want to be part of the conversation, you can post a comment on the stories we post, and we will read the best ones right here on the show. You can also subscribe to this show at twit.tv/TN2 or on iTunes, and you can leave a comment there. We love to get comments. And you can write to us at TN2@twit.tv and watch live every weekday at 4 p.m. Pacific. And don't miss our morning news program, Tech News Today, every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm Megan Maroney. Thanks for watching.
Bandwidth for Tech News Tonight is brought to you by CashFly.com.